I understand that this is the season of nonviolence, which is bookmarked by the assassinations of the two most thoughtful and active advocates of nonviolence, Mohandas Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. And I know that Arun Gandhi, Gandhi's grandson, who started this, would say that the season of nonviolence is actually longer than the period of June 30th to April 4th. I actually have a song in my CD player in the car right now, one of my favorite songs. It's an R&B song from about 1988 called Two Occasions by The Deal, which at the time was led by Babyface. Some of you may know Babyface. But anyway, I heard some laugh. Somebody knows Babyface. The refrain in the song Two Occasions is, I only think of you on two occasions. That's day and night. Great lines. And the season of nonviolence, we know, is not just one season, it's year-long. Nonviolence isn't a part-time affair, it's a long-term commitment. Nonviolence is a way of life. And that's something I learned 30 years ago when I had the opportunity to be an intern at the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was flying to Atlanta to participate in a nonviolence workshop with high school students. And as I was on the plane, I was just thinking about the ways, my life has been influenced specifically, specifically influenced by Dr. King. When I was a student at St. Mary's University, the very first thing I ever had published anywhere was an op-ed piece advocating that King's birthday be a national holiday. It ran in January of 1983 in the San Antonio Express-News. My grandmother says, well, why don't you send it to the King Center? I didn't know anything about the King Center, but I sent them the column. And that's what led to me being a scholarly intern in the summer of 1984, the most significant, life-changing event summer of my life. Not just because of relationships I made that are precious to me to this day, but because of just being truly introduced to King for the first time, but especially to nonviolence as a philosophy. And that it's not just a tactic that you use for a campaign, for a movement, but that it is, again, a way of life. And the other part that was so significant about that summer was that those of us who were interns, we studied nonviolence, Kingian nonviolence, Gandhian nonviolence, but we also were placed in a department that kind of fit our talents. So if you were a community organizer, there was a department for that. If you were in education, there was something for that. I was just beginning to call myself a writer, so they placed me with the communications director. And so I was able to write some CNN commentaries for Coretta Scott King. And in doing that reawakened this desire to write that I'd had since I was a child, but which for whatever reason had gone away for a few years. So by the time I left Atlanta in '84, I was thinking that maybe writing, maybe journalism was a career I wanted to pursue. Now, it took about 10 years before I could convince a publication that it was a career that I could pursue for them. But fortunately, the Express News gave me an opportunity, and I was there for 17 years. And there was a point when one of my colleagues was talking to me about my columns, and she referred to it as my ministry. And I never thought about it like that. But then I just got to thinking for the first time about, again, the influence of the King Center and nonviolence in what I did, in many ways unconsciously, not just in the subjects I chose to write about, not only because, like all of you, I wanted to change the world and wanted to just make everything better, but also in the way that I wrote, not attacking people. I may disagree with them. Lord knows I wanted to attack some folks personally, but not to ever make it personal, because one of the things we were taught, that to be nonviolent means you never attack anyone's person. You attack the stand they're taking, their acts, but not the person, because part of being nonviolent is believing that people can be redeemed and that people can be changed. And that realization gave me a deeper appreciation of just how much nonviolence has changed my life. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like I was a gangbanger. I had a violent lifestyle and it was just dramatic change from one to the other. I was never like that. But still, it was a subtle explosion in my mind and the way I lived. The problem with nonviolence, and I noticed the discussion between Carl and Rudy in the newsletter, it's one that I've often had also. The problem with nonviolence is that it is defined by what it's not. And the first thing I said to you when I got up here wasn't none bad morning. You always have to let it sink in for a few seconds. Seattle and Denver's not going to play in the none mini bowl. And of course, my favorite is, that special person that we care about, have those deep feelings for. We don't say, baby, I none hate you. So it is defined by what it's not. And I don't know if we're going to ever find a word like ahimsa, like the word that Gandhi used. I don't know if we're going to ever find a word that's going to do what we want to do. I just think we got to take it and run with it, and knowing what we mean by nonviolence, and try to live by it. King's definition of nonviolence was love in action, which is about as good as you can get. And of course, King, when he talked about love, he wasn't talking about because it's, we don't have to like one another. There's about 4 or 5 dozen people in here. Maybe, I don't know how often y'all all come together. And maybe there's a reason y'all don't all come together, which goes to my point, is that we don't have to like everybody. We have to love everybody in that deep, unconditional type of love in which we always respect the dignity of every human being and the humanity of everybody. That we never do anything that's going to denigrate someone or detract from their humanity, from that dignity. So to like someone is a personal choice. To love someone in that way is much deeper. And I think we can. So to me, it really does get down to being, when we talk about being nonviolent and living a life that's nonviolent, how do we treat one another? How do we care for each other? Even those we don't like, those who hurt us, those who do us wrong. How do we treat one another? I'm not impressed with anyone's social activism, with all the causes that they march for or attend rallies for. If I see them attack a waitress with words because she got their order wrong, that's not nonviolent. So it's all about treating each other with kindness and respect and just being good to one another. I mean, that's when it all starts, just being good to one another. Another problem with nonviolence, but not just that, but wanting to do good and wanting to change the world, is that we can't. I mean, it took me a while, but I learned a few years ago, this painful realization that I'm not Superman. I thought I was for a long time, but I could not change the world. Shared the same profession with Clark Kent. People still think my name is Clark. Wasn't first or last name, but I never got anywhere with Lois Lane. But I'm not. Superman doesn't have this ache in his back that I do. his knees don't creak when he does too many squats. So I learned that I wasn't Superman and that I couldn't change this world by myself, and none of us can. What helped me was the realization that each of us are given a very short period on this earth to occupy a small parcel of earth. And I think that all that we are obligated to do, all that nonviolence, whatever God, whatever higher being we believe in, requires us to do, is that when we leave this earth, that small parcel of earth is a little bit better than the way we found it. And that's how you change the world, one parcel of earth at a time. You know, Gandhi's parcel of earth was South Africa and was India, larger parcel of earth maybe, I give you. King's parcel of earth was the United States, but you can actually break it down. It was the American South. And actually, you could break it down even more, Alabama, because you look at the three major movements of the modern civil rights movement, Montgomery, Birmingham, and Selma, they're all in Alabama. But yet from those parcels of earth in which Gandhi and King stood, their deeds, their influence has resonated through cultures, through centuries, not through centuries yet, but through generations. Both of their work has influenced every liberation movement across the world for the last 60 or 70 years. The parcel of earth that we occupy may not have quite that range of influence, but it does touch people. I know that you all go out and do things today and tomorrow that feeding folks, helping folks, it's gonna change something. Someone's lives are gonna be made better by what you do. And so when it comes to nonviolence, as much as a problem we may have with the definition, and as much as we may be discouraged because we can't change things as fast as we want to do, I think if we just keep our minds on two things, being good to one another and caring for one another, and tilling that parcel of earth that we occupy and doing some good on that piece of land, things do get a little bit better. Things do change. And I want to end by talking about one of my favorite novels is Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. Not a cheerful novel. It's not going to make you want to go out and dance in the streets and sing songs, but it's a powerful novel. And there's a part early on in the novel where a priest, Father Zosima, is talking to a woman who is identified as the woman of little faith. And the priest distinguishes between two different types of love: imaginary act of love and a true act of love. An imaginary act of love is grand, it's dramatic. Everyone sees it, you celebrate it. You rush into a burning building and you save people, and it's recorded on TV, and everyone knows your name, what you do. You're a hero, a heroine. That's an imaginary act of love. Something that, at least as boys, I know we all dreamt of doing stuff like that a lot. And maybe stopped just about 5 years ago when we realized we weren't Superman. The other type of love, though, is a true act of love, which is slow, it's tedious, and often goes unrecognized. But a true act of love is to know that there are people in that building before it catches on. Maybe to know that there's a problem with code violations to begin with and do something about that. But to know that there are people living in that building, old folks, children, unemployed people. There's something that can be done to help those people. It has nothing to do with the fire. There's something that can be done to help those people find opportunities to better their lives and to ease whatever pain they are going through. That's true acts of love. Few of us will ever have the chance to perform an imaginary act of love. But daily, we have opportunities to perform true acts of love. We let more of those opportunities pass by than we recognize. But that's how we do this. That's how we get through this life. That's how we get through this world. That's how we try to remain true to the ideals of P.C. I'm so glad that we're celebrating him this morning. And like you, I think it was you who said that you didn't know that he had written Turn, Turn, Turns. I didn't know he had written Turn, Turn, Turn either. I just associated with the birds. But the only way that we attempt to reach this ideal that we have, understanding that more than likely the ideal will always elude us, because nonviolence also recognizes that evil is a part of this world. It's a part of this world. And I like to remind folks that the theme of the civil rights movement was not "we shall eliminate." It wasn't "we shall eradicate." It was "we shall overcome." And that's what this is all about, is trying to overcome. And that's what we have to do with nonviolence, and that's what nonviolence should inspire us to do and provide us with the philosophy and the tools to do, is to overcome. May all of our seasons be seasons in which we're dedicated and devoted to caring for people and being good to people. May all of our seasons be seasons in which we find real acts of love to do and to grace this earth. And may all of our seasons be defined by nonviolence. Thank you very much. Amen.